Hey, what's up, everybody? It's me, Danae, and I'm here with a message for you. What's going on, everyone? It's Wednesday, April 8th, 2026, 12:57 on the clock. Hope you are doing well. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood. I hope the same for you. Although winter is still holding on for dear life because temperatures are still chill, but it's sunny and it's not snowing. So what more can you ask for, right? And it's not raining also. So let's just see what we got. Oh, I think today is the day Mercury is finally out of post shadow. Yes, hallelujah on that one indeed. So it is officially direct in full motion. So yes, thank God for that. And I feel like I saw somewhere that from now until like June will be like an extensive stretch of time where there will be no planets in retrograde. I'm pretty sure like that's happening even right now, where nothing's in retrograde, and we'll have that going for ourselves until June. I think it was something like mid-June. I can't remember the date. But I sure hope that's true, because that'll be an amazing run, after this jump start from Aries season, which kind of started off a bit sluggish, just a little bit, especially due to Mercury still kind of, stubbornly keeping a hold on certain things here and there. Even the post shadow, the pre shadow was a bitch. The post shadow was I almost said a C word. It was, and everything really the in between was kind of a C word to some degree. And I guess the post shadow was, what could the post shadow be? The post shadow was a hoe. Oh yeah, but that's in the past. We forgive you, Mercury. You just being who you are in those phases, and we don't hold it against you. We love you. But thank you for getting your act together. We appreciate it. Let's see what we got. Ooh. Wheel of Fortune. That's a lovely way to start. Yeah, things are in motion, on schedule as they're fated to be. I just heard as they're prophesied to be. That's the deeper inflection of this card, but definitely things are moving ahead according to plan. And according to what has been divinely, or at least universally, projected. So we're on schedule is what I'm hearing. Let's see what else. Oh, I think that was on it. That was on. Oh, sorry guys. I'm not sure if you can hear that anyway. But that was almost the 8 of Wands. So to me, that's ahead of schedule, or something being expedited or accelerated to get on, get in alignment with divine time. Yeah. Ooh, that was almost the 10 of Swords. To bring closure to a treacherous past season in whatever way that could be. So maybe that treachery, or whatever that 10 of Swords may be, some unfortunate ending, is maybe that's what's being made up for in terms of lost time, or just loss in general. Interesting. or I'm being corrected, what seemed lost. Nothing is lost. Everything is being recovered. As I said, we're right on time, we're right on schedule. That was the Queen of Cups, Queen of Swords, yep. Confirmation, we're all on time. King of Wands. I don't think I've seen the King of Wands in a while. Okay. King of Wands. Some inspired action here, or some driven action or ambition being taken. I would say even like to solidify one's position of power, authority, creatively. Let me see what's with this King of Wands. Because I'm hearing all types of stuff, but I'm like, okay. It's like somebody's ascent to the throne is being either accelerated, my eye is twitching, either accelerated or just confirmed, you know, like their ascent or appointment to some type of seat of power, authority, even if it's just, you know, the assumption of creative power in your own life. You know what I mean? Like there's something being returned, or with that Eight of Wands, like even being supercharged and again expedited. So whatever is coming, not only is it going to enhance the frequency of creativity, maybe manifestation or attraction of a King of Wands by divine right. You know, it's nothing out of order here. It's what was supposed to be so. And I'm getting like I was saying, like something almost being expedited and returned. Like it seems like it's coming back at an inflated magnitude by way of that Eight of Wands. And maybe even in the timing that it's coming as well, seems like, you know, may seem to be like overnight or in a blink of an eye, but it's really not. It's like I was saying with that Ten of Swords, it's like something that was maybe delayed or held back, or corrupted in some way, shape, or form, maybe even sabotaged, is now kind of bursting through the threshold or the seams of reality, because it's just catching up to what should have kind of been on target at this point, for the most part anyway. It's just all kind of, you know, it's like when that you are expecting this, real primitive, but like when you're expecting disbursements. This actually happened to me for an unemployment a few years back. Okay. Sorry for that. My window is open, so it's probably extra loud. But like it was during that like COVID time, and things were just a mess. And so I was claiming weekly or whatever the case was, but I wasn't actually receiving the payout. So I was claiming as I was scheduled to do every week, and hoping every week that that would be the one, fingers crossed, that they would finally release the funds. It didn't happen that I received all. I went through a whole cycle almost of claiming funds before all of the disbursements were released at once, when they should have been, you know, happening in weekly increments. But I mean, you know, I wasn't mad at it to have one big lump sum, but it also kind of stifled my stability throughout that waiting time. So it's something about that where it's like something that was rightfully supposed to have been dispersed in a certain increment of time frame or schedule on a schedule, was delayed for whatever reason. Like I was joking about Mercury, I had a similar experience through Mercury retrograde, this time with taxes. So like just a fluke situation has never happened to me before and put a whole wrench in my plans. But that's neither here nor there, because the point of the matter is, whatever it is, although it's been delayed, it's not denied. And it's like it was just kind of being held on reserve somewhere, maybe even for safekeeping, and it's about to be released. And what it's going to do is enhance the advancement of, say, the King of Wands agenda or ambition or their plan, or their their initiatives, let's say, because you may actually find that you'll be able to do more having the whole lump sum in your possession than the little trickles and breadcrumbs here and there that you were scheduled to receive, so something like that. And of course, this may not be limited to money. I'm likening it to that, but it could be energy, it could be inspiration, it could be creativity in a raw form, maybe passion in a kinetic form, like having like this confidence for sure, maybe different layers of confidence that has been stripped from you that are connected to enhanced, abilities being properly, what's the right word? Like like performance, or your execution of certain things has been hampered on account of what's been withheld for whatever reason. I keep saying power, so it literally could be some abilities that are being enhanced in a way, like you were supposed to get certain abilities along your life's journey or through lifetimes, even when we got the Wheel of Fortune here. But each lifetime there was some interruption, some interference, some usurp of your power, some detour, some disturbance, and you didn't maybe in the last few lifetimes you didn't get what was due to you, holistically speaking. Maybe you just got a breadcrumb here or nothing at all, but you still continue to maintain that ambition and enthusiasm and that drive to just keep pushing, keep powering through. It could work in lifetimes, but it could certainly work in just this lifetime over seasons, where you've tried things, you've ventured out on certain things, and maybe they fell short, or you fell short, or things just fell apart, and nothing seemed to really materialize in its fullest form. Virtually because it wasn't time to, like by our limited perspective, maybe it should have been. But generally speaking, it's like nothing truly is really lost if it was still stored up for you to receive at a later time anyway. So it could be, the conditions weren't ripe or safe for you to receive certain disbursements or transferences of power, transfers of power or wealth or whatever the case may be, even knowledge, understanding, because we did see the Queen of Swords intel. But now it will seem like a bit of an overload to some degree, because I learned in momentum education that overwhelm is a choice. So you choose to be overwhelmed. The King of Wands is not really going to be overwhelmed. I'm glad that it's him, even against the Queen, because he knows how to handle himself. There's no force too great to manage. But, for all intents and purposes, the magnitude of what's being transferred might seem like a whoa type of, response, because, like I said, of how much, how soon, and, the urgency in which you may be provoked to respond, you know, whether it's management or redirection, whatever, you know, like integration. There could be quite a bit of a demand on your reactionary response, kind of like out of nowhere or just more than ever before. Yeah. But it'll be good problems to have, I believe. It'll probably be actually quite exciting, maybe even arousing. I just got chills too with the King of Wands. Like, he loves a challenge. He loves an adventure. He loves, you know, something to tantalize his senses, you know, even to be able to take on something bigger than you, presumably, is kind of like, you know, a fun day for the King of Wands. A good time, you know. There's no other king in the deck that would handle that with more poise and composure than, you know, the magnitude of what I'm sensing with more poise and composure. And look good doing it, might I add. Make it look easy. There it is. Make it, oh, look at this. I'm going to take this upright. Yeah, because there's some type of, yeah, I feel like it's just like the balance of power, you know, and it came out a little bit in a struggle, but like I'm saying, it's like, this is nothing that's hard for a King of Wands to manage. I think the only point of struggle could be, you know, maybe still trying to hold on to an old timeline, you know, or hold on to your conditioned idea of how things are supposed to go, you know, like I said, that an immediate response being kind of like, whoa, 1:14 on the clock just now, being like, whoa, you know, this is a lot, or I didn't expect all this, or, you know, in this timing, or right now, you know, all of that good stuff could be the only challenge here, when you kind of have your feet grounded quite a bit on what you're already managing, like what's doable to manage reasonably, versus here it is, like I said, like this extreme transfer of energy, of power. And this is inspired action, but being almost like I was saying, you're like being almost like provoked to respond immediately, or strategically. And it's like it's I feel like whatever this encounter is, it's an urgency, you know, not a rush and not a force, but there's an urgency attached to it because it is so big. It requires immediate attention, and for you to ultimately jump into action again in a way that you may have very little point of reference for, because you've never experienced this much supercharge and this much upgrading happening at one time. Imagine lifetime, like I was saying, like lifetimes of power, inspiration. You could be getting hella downloads of ideas and you know, ways to advance your creativity, actions to take in things that may have lied dormant, you know, to some degree, or quite settled or plateaued for a long time. You could get a burst of energy to just want to tackle everything at once, but have to figure out a way to manage your time and your energy wisely so you don't burn out, you know. And then don't get me started if we're talking about money, actual money, or some type of material windfall or inflow. You got to figure out the best place to save, invest, you know, where to add value in terms of what you are creating, where do you put those resources first, if at all, or who do you share with, who do you donate to, who, like, everything, you know, suddenly is on your plate. It's a big plate with the Wheel of Fortune. And you may be used to just a couple small plates that you've learned how to balance quite well, you know. So it's like, again, it's not a bad problem to have, but it does seem to be a heightened level of responsibility that requires immediate action and attention. Yeah. All right, so let's see. Let's get a few more. But if the divine is passing out wands, that means you have showed and proved that you are capable of handling it. Like I said with the King of Wands, you know, like you know what to do with your energy, with your power, with your time, with your passion. You know how to keep it pure, not to overindulge, not to be distracted by lust or I'll just say addictions, because Ace of Wands in a struggle could definitely be on the fence. You know, like you could teeter-totter that fence between doing too much or doing too little. And also, again, the burnout piece, but also the arrogance. Yeah, easy on that, you know, on the arrogance or the ego, when you are in possession or embodying so much power, whatever that amounts to. Yeah, you know, just to stay balanced. Keep yourself humble within reason, you know what I mean? Because it's like, this is big confidence. It's literally big D energy. I mean, the Wheel of Fortune, that's Jupiter. King of Wands is all fire. And the Ace of Wands, you know, is all fire, you know, even on a more intensive level. So it's only but so much humbling you gonna do to an energy like this without there being justification for it, but to just be reasonable, you know, to be tempered. You know, I would love to see that come out as confirmation, to be tempered with all of this high octane frequency you're managing. Let's see, what was that? Queen of Cups. Okay. Queen of Cups. A lot of love and passion, admiration. Well, you know what? That purifies the passion for me. That's the balance, even, because the water kind of cools off the flame. Man, but I feel like, I just feel like there's just going to be a deep satisfaction, and there's also a deep sincerity too. You know, to do everything that to ultimately wield this wand in love. That's what it's given. I love that balance, actually. I really do. Yeah, to let love be the driving force behind everything that you do. Because when you're operating in love, compassion, integrity, in the purest form, it doesn't mean you're a pushover or you're naive or you'll just, you know, wear your heart on your sleeve in the most vulnerable circumstances, you know, where that could be a detriment to you, but you know how to maintain a healthy balance between all of those forces, not disregarding one over the other at any particular time. But there's always like, there's always like a healthy resonance of all things that truly matter. Let me see. Not got the Four of Cups. What is that about? That's kind of random. That's just like, I don't know. That's literally just somebody on the sidelines, like, feeling left out. Like, I don't even know. They don't even have a place in this story. Let's see, what's on the other side of that? I guess it exemplifies, of course, the Knight of Swords. Yeah, somebody's... This is a sideline character. This is not like, it's literally giving somebody that wants to be the main character, but confirmation, but they just don't have the stuff, you know. This could be, yeah, because the Four of Cups is like somebody that is not even receiving that cup, which is of the divine. So if you're not going to receive what is presumed to be the highest frequency of love, transferable to, you know, self-love and unconditional love, you certainly can't operate in a function, in a frequency that you don't function in. You know, the Knight of Swords in this case has a different agenda. And we ain't even had no swords until here he comes. You know, it's more cerebral here, but not even the highest frequency of that. Like if it was a king, then maybe we could talk, but the Knight of Swords, the Four of Cups, is just somebody that has either missed an opportunity or is trying to reclaim an opportunity to kind of get in on this fortune, on this goodness, on their own terms, but without the intention to really submit to the terms of the divine to gain access. That's what I'm getting. It's like somebody missed an opportunity and now they're trying to backtrack here, like, hold up, wait, let me choose again, let me get another go. And it's like, I mean, you can, but it won't be this set of choices. This set of choices was a limited time offer. Now you have to ultimately generate a new array of choices. And most times you don't have control over what that gets to be. Like when the divine is offering you something and you kind of like scoff at it, you know, you may not have the opportunity to get a second chance or a second go. It might be something else that, you know, maybe is better or maybe pales in comparison. You never know. But what it most likely won't be is a spin the block situation to revisit an opportunity at exactly the same frequency and magnitude that it was offered before. It's just, time has moved on, so nothing is the same. And as I was saying, like everything has an appointed time, an appointed measure for things that have been withheld. 9 times out of 10, it wasn't on account of resistance or rejection. You know, if it's being dispersed at you know, at a accelerated rate and a inflated rate, you know, then would be, naturally expected, meaning you're getting everything back that you were that was due to you in the first place. That's a different type of scenario than when you had everything offered to you, at one time, maybe even on a silver platter, and you were like, no, I think I could do better than that. And then to go find out that maybe what you were seeking or what you had really wasn't better than what you were offered, and now wanting to come back, and it's like, well, no love lost holistically. However, that offer is no longer on the table. Let's see. We're exactly 30, so let's see. Let's keep going. What I said if it was the King of Swords, maybe we could talk. Well, it may be, but this is the energy of the King of Swords, like almost frantic, or, he's on the mission, but it may be an unrequited one in more ways than one at this point, because it's given a backtrack or a revisit to the past, that's just not going to be what it was when you left it, no matter how you return. The circumstances, and 9 times out of 10, the King of Swords or Knight of Swords, whatever we're talking about here, is not the same either. But certainly the circumstances are not, the conditions are not the same. So it has to be a new approach or a new scenario altogether. The Knight of Swords would believe that they have, the cleverness and the aptitude, I suppose, to make something shake if they need to. But let's see. Let's move on. I feel like the most interesting aspect of this is that I called out the King of Swords, and here he is. But if he truly is a King of Swords, then what is this Knight about? Like, what is that energy? You either are the Knight or the King of Swords, and of course the King could have once upon a time been the Knight, but it's not likely that the Knight is the King, or has been the King. So yeah, I don't know. Or it could literally be someone trying to like reverse time, because I did say time has moved on, like go back to their youth and revisit a moment in time where their decision made all the difference. That's interesting. I don't know what type of black magic they do to do that. Like to turn back circumstances so that they can return to the exact moment when their decision made all the difference. Nah, that ain't gonna happen. Not now. You can change your decision to move forward, but you can't go back. See what I'm saying? Like, yeah, because they see this fortune. They found themselves erring on the more limited, maybe even unsavory side of fortune. Kind of looking at what you have like, this ain't what I bargained for. This isn't what I expected. They really anticipated being able to acquire more for themselves, or better, or faster, or whatever they were after. There was something that was, I don't know, like there was an advancement, or what's the word I'm looking for? I guess an enhanced outcome that was idolized. So I don't know. Let's, because I don't want to talk about that. I want to go back to. And this also does pay tribute to those that kind of like hung in there through the ebbs and flow of time and circumstance, keeping their eye on the ultimate prize, or on the faith to believe for an ultimate prize, or a meaning, or something bigger or greater than what they were experiencing. This is also a nod to that at the Knight of Wands, where there was a great deal of work, endurance, resilience that was maintained to see this reality materialize. And so that Eight of Wands that I talked about, since we're talking about how this card is either side of that spectrum, that acceleration, that return of fate and fortune that was held back, for some, it's an upgrade. For others, 1:33 on the clock as the phone lights up. For others, it's, I guess, a downgrade, or at least a detriment. You know, it's an obstacle, something to have to, where the King of Wands is having to manage great fame. Oh, I didn't mean to say fame. I meant to say favor and fortune, but whatevs. Great favor and fortune. Wow, I just started twitching like crazy. That's what I'm saying. This King of Swords, Knight of Swords energy is having to manage misfortune, perhaps, and again, something unsavory. It's still at the same intense magnitude, though, and acceleration in the amount, or the grandeur of it all. It's regardless of the frequency, it's still a flow that is designated to reach recipients, regardless of where you stand on this wheel. So that could be that as well. And here it is, the return back to a former point of a moment of decision, is the disparity between those that chose to endure and persevere, and those that ultimately, you know, wanted to curb that part of the process, or take a shortcut, or, you know, another a way that would create a more expedited return, maybe even a premature return, where they got, remember I said, like, getting all that you can handle handed to you at a time that is before you're either ready for it, or when the aspects are not ripe to fully receive it, and you ultimately find yourself either mismanaging it or being mismanaged by those terms and conditions, because it wasn't time, you weren't ready for it, you weren't matured enough to manage it responsibly. Oh boy, look at this. 7 of Wands. Yeah, that's that protective, standing your ground energy. My phone is going off right now. 1:37 on the clock, which is an 11. ultimately. And here's the Lovers, or two, you know, whichever. Here's the Lovers. Yeah, this empowerment to make, the will to make empowered choices, even in dire circumstances, or extenuating. I always mess this word up. Is this extenuating or extenuating? I always forget to look it up after the video. But that word, circumstances, one way or the other, because some were conditioned, well, tried and tested with very little, having very little access or available to them, and some were tried and tested with having the most. It's given, you know, the prodigal son energy, where the one son was given his whole inheritance because he asked for it. The other chose to wait, you know, his turn to get, you know, till the rightful time when it was to be released, which would have been after his father passed on, right? Now, of course, there are different inflections of this story, but for the point I'm trying to make, you know, it gives that where someone had it all in their possession, but they also squandered it away. Now, the happily ever after in all of this is that when he returned, he was restored. But here it is, he had to return to what? His self. It said that he came to himself in the midst of pig slop, you know, where he was eating worse than the slaves back on his father's estate. But he was too prideful to turn back around and, you know, make amends or whatever the case may be. And when he did, of course, only after he did, because his father didn't necessarily come seek him out, but when he returned, he expected for, you know, it to be in shame and so on and so forth, and disgrace. That really wasn't the energy that he was met with. He was met with an embrace and with joy and welcome and kindness, you know, and compassion. And again, he was restored. So, you know, it's like there's the opportunity there, like I said before. Now, he couldn't get back what he necessarily had spent because that was no longer available. But because he ultimately repented from his pride, he was at least able to be restored to his foundational state of wellness and stability, you know, and being taken care of for the most part. But some folks can't even bring themselves to do that much because, you know, the pride is too strong, and the pain and anguish of not having it your way, the way that you thought, you know, you had it figured out, is too great to admit, you know, that you may have misstepped or that you see things differently now, you know, or even the fear of being condemned or cast out upon approach is also the fear. But it's the higher choices that we make, the more ascended ones, that yield the best results. Those pride, ego, scarcity, even greed, lust, those choices don't yield high, don't produce high results or returns or rewards. They're just depleting continuously. And so that's the lesson that's been learned here on different sides, and I guess everything in between. But the option of choice is still always on the table. It just might not be back to the original offer, you know, or array of options. And some folks got to be okay with that too, that you can't have it your way like Burger King, you know, in every regard, but you can certainly have it better than what you're headed towards. What's that? Page of Cups. Yeah, like not wanting to return to that submissive state, you know, maybe even to feel dependent a bit or vulnerable. That's what it is, like that vulnerable state. And here's the Knight, yet another Knight. It's a bit of a delay. Somebody might be dragging their feet, but they might come around. Maybe begrudgingly, reluctantly was the word I was trying to think of yesterday on the message. Yeah. I think it was yesterday or the day before. But here it is. Look, as soon as you start to put that one foot in front of the other, look what's happening here. The circumstances are accelerating even for the energy that I'm speaking of. But this is also, yet again, the acceleration of what was supposed to take its sweet old time, you know, because it always has. Justice being served has always been a slow process by our conditioning and our expectation. A return on invested energy or reward for hard work always seems to come at a gradual rate than what it was offered or originally invested, except for now. Something is different. Something is different now. And what may have taken years before, maybe even lifetimes before, as I started this, is happening seemingly in an instant. 1:44 on the clock, y'all. Just lit up on the phone. This is an acceleration of, I said, of a divine agenda or prophecy. I said something like that in the beginning because it's just time for it to come into fruition. It's been held back long enough. It's been delayed. It's been denied. It's been detoured. It's been distorted. It's been deferred. And now that all systems are a go, that are in alignment to receive, to integrate, and to conduct, it's only a matter of the green light to do so. And it feels like the green light, this something's already been green lit. Whether you realize it or not, it's already on go. And it could even be, speaking of, you know, Mercury finally getting in alignment, that was the last planet, if I'm not mistaken, to be back into its full capacity, its full, you know, transit forward. And maybe that was a missing link, you know what I mean? To finally have, like I said, all planets in forward motion and you know, a productive state, as above so below, for things in this realm to mirror accordingly. And of course that's happened in times before, but it's something about the present season, era, timeline that's happening where all things are in accordance at one time. Not just this part, but that part's not ready, or this person, but that person's not ready. Everything that needs to be in place is. Lovers, everybody's in their unique position and placement to be elevated, exalted, ascended, whatever is in order here, advanced. 144. Which, from my understanding, is more of a, look at this, is more of a frequency than it even is a number. So it's something about, you know, the vibration being perfectly aligned at this time for things to happen as they've already been prophesied to do so. Like this what's happening, or what's underway, or whatever I'm talking about here, it was happening regardless. It was just a matter of the perfect alignment and timing, and we could not know, in entirety and for sure what that looks like by divine standards. But you can sense that something is quite different than anything we've experienced or can even reflect upon before our time. Like something is moving at a much more unlimited velocity than it ever has before. Even the days seem to move so fast. The time, like already here we are at April 8th. And I feel like it was just January 1st, So it's like everything is really just catching up to where it's meant to be. And I feel like we had to be properly, what's the right word? Like, that's what it was. Like, that's why there's always this disparity in energies, because there needed to be like when you make something ready to be infused, like I want to say conditioned, like properly conditioned for this advancement, but I don't think that's the word that I'm looking for, where our systems had to kind of be like to be prepared or readied to embody, and let alone conducive to and able to conduct such high power, even if we're talking about literally just a higher resonance of creativity that you've never had before, abilities that you've never realized, or that have never been activated before. All of that is kind of new. Here it is: resources, abundance, money, wealth that you've never had access to before. A lot of us had to really be cleansed from old conditionings and mindsets, and even perceptions in the psychology, distorted psychology about abundance. What it is, how we relate to it, how we see ourselves worthy of it. How, again, the conduction part, how you spend it, how you invest it, how you share it, all of that needed to kind of be reworked and rewired so that we would have the capacity to receive more than ever before. And there's so much more to be received and gained than really any like really without without limitation, you know what I mean? Because the only thing that limits you really is your own choices. But as I said, like, there's still always the opportunity to reform and reset, and to ultimately still be on your way to this fate and fortune yet again. That awareness alone and acknowledgement and acceptance has not always been the case throughout humanity. In seasons past and lifetimes past, even if a faithful few could perceive that, the masses generally reject that, because we've been conditioned by our captivity to believe there's always a ceiling and a limitation on what you can do and achieve and be, and so on and so forth. Even those that project to be limitless in their own idealistic way still do operate in limitation, whether they realize it or not. Even the limitations of their the choices that they restrict themselves to, by way of rejections and denials and so on and so forth. So it's like to really open up the heavens mentally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically speaking, and that consciousness be accessible to humanity is something like altogether new. Some folks may not know how to act to have that level of access. And that'll be the real separation of wheat and chaff, to see what you do with this newfound or reformed you, or whatever the case may be, on either side of the spectrum. But here it is, a great deal of wealth to handle, no matter how you perceive it. That's what it is. And it's never been so accessible. Because I've been talking a lot about Jesus lately. But even like when Jesus came to liberate the people, more or less, to bring that message of liberation and sovereignty and abundant life, that was a word that was not available to the people of that day, to the nation of that day. No one was speaking like that. That wasn't deemed demonic or blasphemous. And here you had this benevolent practicing entity, that was demonstrating his divinity in real time, in real form, in real life. And that was a hard pill to swallow, that, that was okay, let alone that you have that righteous right as well, or you have that righteous ability and capability as well. It's one thing to see somebody else do it, and it's like, okay, that's cool, but now you're telling me I can heal, I can speak life, I can be free to be myself without condemnation and guilt and shame, under the confinements, of a law that even the law leaders can't follow at times. Like, it was so divisive during that day, and the message and the presence of Jesus was supposed to be liberating and uniting. But like I said, that was a great deal of wealth to, like, most people were probably like, what do you want me to do with this? You giving me all this power, all this authority over my life? That's too much to handle. No, we praise you, Jesus. We praise you. You get all the glory. You get all the honor. You know what I mean? But it's like Jesus, like, no. What you see me do, I see my father do. That's why I can do. And I'm trying to show you can too. Like, that message was lost in translation for many, and still is today, even for those that, again, feel like they have the hold, even the monopoly on Jesus Christ, and you can't tell them no different, on God himself, to put it biblically. You know what I'm saying? So it's just interesting how these things are playing out. But I feel like God is just bringing that divine mirror right up in our faces, like, this is what I've been trying to tell you. You are a creator too. Now I need you to get to work. You need the resources. Here you go. Now don't fuck up the church's money. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where we are with it. And look at this, the tower. Yeah, like it's like a mind fuck for most people to encounter this reflection of abundance within themselves, to accept it, to first of all be literally encounter it and become aware of it. Then the acceptance part is like, that's too much. I just don't know. And it like I was saying earlier, it is a disturbance to business as usual, to life as usual, to life as you've known it, to suddenly be certified sovereign, you know? not just in spirit and in sentiment, but in flesh, to the point where you might physically be able to create whatever type of, like, you literally might have the access and the resources to create whatever type of life you can imagine for yourself. And that's the real test, because then what do you do with it? Do you self-destruct? Do you overload? Do you burn out? Or do you create magnificence in the frequency that you've been ordained to do so? It's like the ground will be completely shifted from under you the moment this transfer of favor, fortune, advancement, promotion, whatever we're talking about here, like this transference is happening. Whether anybody wants it, likes it, or not, it's happening. Let's see, one more. And I really do get the Tower is just a disruption to the life you've known, one way or the other. Because we're talking about on the side where somebody may have missed an opportunity, the disruption is that right up under this Knight of Swords, that you don't have the power to just spin the block and have it your way like you may be used to doing. To just say, oh, I changed my mind, let me just get a do-over real quick and this and run this cycle back so I can make a different choice, so I can have a better outcome. You may not have it that simple. And the disruption for those that have been in the struggle and having to stand their ground against all odds and kind of even grown used to a certain relentless resistance are really going to have to also get used to a new normal of a lack thereof resistance. That's what I mean, a lack thereof in terms of resistance, where there are no limits and there is no one holding you back. And then what will you do? Will you still hold yourself back because that's what you're used to? Will you operate in fear and insecurity because you are relenting to conditionings that certain things are not reserved for you or available to you, or that you shouldn't venture into certain territories? Like, you may realize you have a certain power and then be afraid of it. Imagine being able to manifest that will and you afraid that you might manifest some negative shit. Like, I can imagine that could be a concern. But will that inhibit you from creating beauty in the world, for building constructively? The parable about the talents, of how which was like coins, how it was kind of described in fortune, pretty much, resource, something that was almost pretty much granted to a number of individuals, and one did absolutely nothing with the many that they had. One buried it, and then one did actually put it to work, and I forget the order of who did what exactly, but I know the most that someone was given, I think, was 10. I think it was 10. It was 3 different people, I believe. Yeah. And I feel like the one person operated in fear, and I really do believe it was the ones, maybe it was 5, I can't remember. But it was one that had a great deal, that he was actually quite favored in the amount that he was granted. But he was so afraid that he was going to lose it or squander it that he just buried it. He didn't invest it, he didn't spend it. He didn't do anything with it. He just buried it. So it ultimately produced nothing. Just sat in the dirt. It wasn't a seed to grow. It was something that was resourceful for your carnal existence that needed to be activated or initiated for some purpose. And do you hear what I'm saying? That could be your talents, your gifts, your abilities, your traits, your trade, your intel, like whatever you're in possession of, again, your fortune, it gets to be multiplied. And then the person, I think, that maybe had one of them kind of spent it, I believe, and then somebody that had another amount, he did something with it that actually ended up increasing what he had. And I probably didn't mess that parable all up, but it's somewhere in the Gospels. It won't be hard to find. The parable of the talents, if you want to look it up. The only point that I'm trying to make here is the power of choice to do the most with what you have, whether it be a little or a lot. And some folks had very little to work with and made the most of it. Some folks had a lot to work with and squandered it all. Some had a fair amount and did nothing really valuable to advance it, particularly in any way that was productive for the future. So, I forget what the repercussions were, but I feel like the one guy, either, I don't know if it was taken away, the one that just buried it, or that was just all he had left, where the other ones were increased ultimately, I think. Like they were increased to the amount that was given to the most of the most allotment or something like that. So it even nods to how fair the universe is and how intentional it is to create balance, but that we co-create with that intention always. So you can't defer that power to anything or anyone outside of you. Because in the end, I think it was the master, not Jesus himself, but the master wanted to know, what did you do with what I gave you? And this question was the same, and the expectation was the same, was equal among them all, that you did something productive, And the one that thought they were the most clever to hide it was actually the one that found themselves in the most, or bury it in the most disfavor. 9 of Swords. So I think the other part that I want to affirm is that you'd be better off doing something than doing nothing at all. Because at least if you do something, you can be course corrected. But to have all this wealth and favor and fortune and high value and trust from the divine to use it, and you do nothing, that's, to me, is you sit on it, you withhold it, you hoard it for self, you don't share it, you don't project it, you don't produce from it. That's probably more of an abomination than someone that may make a few missteps along the way or a few bad investments. So I don't know, that kind of took a different turn, I think, but maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, I'm done here. King of Cups and the strength. Yeah, like here it is again, that power of love right here. That if in sincerity, if you're doing things honestly with a pure heart and pure intention, and that is the driving force, there really is nothing to fear. Even if you make a mistake, or there's a realization after the fact that you wish you could have done something differently. So whatever this big transfer is coming in, it's really urging you, once again, as I spoke about, really moving in the frequency of a high frequency of courage and confidence in what you're creating, in what you're building, in what you're manifesting, initiating, whatever you're doing, because it's definitely kinetic here with the King of Wands leading the way and the Ace of Wands short after. Be bold and brave to do so without apologies and without inhibition. Somebody's got to have the courage to do so, because it's time to get shit done. You know, it's been enough courage and ego thrown around unjustifiably to produce things that are often one-sided or singularly effective or beneficial. So for those that actually have a sincere heart and mind and will and passion to create an alignment with divine order, whatever you perceive that to be truly, you know, because you'll know if you are in that will truly or not, by what you produce, you know, what manifests on that account. But for those that, but you got to do something, you know, and you got to kind of let it rip in this season. So back to that urgency in response and activation and initiation. Like when you get the green light, once you get the resources, when the vision is clear and the training wheels are off, which I feel they already are, just go for it. It seems to me that whomever can relate to the highest frequency of this message has the divine on their side wholeheartedly. Yeah. It's just matching your energy, pretty much. It's just matching your energy. Mm-hmm. Okay, so keep that same energy. And that's enough of that, and that's that on that, right? All right, and if as long as you're maintaining that same high level of energy, which ultimately is passion in its purest form, its most sincere form, you can't lose. You literally can't lose. Something powerful is going to be created as a result of that. And anything that may need to be tweaked or reformed or changed or, you know, whatever, so be it. No sweat. But the world needs more of whatever it is you're cooking up to come quickly, to manifest sooner than later. And I'm preaching to the choir, hallelujah, on that, to myself or the congregation, whichever makes sense. All right, so thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your day. I'll see you again soon. Until next time, as always, I leave you with peace.